Pirates have sailed the high seas for almost as long as man has transported cargo by boat. The first accounts of piracy date back to 1350 BC. And America, she's no different. During the Revolutionary War, we had our own pirate that took the fight to the English coast. With hit-and-run guerrilla-style tactics, this man raised hell for the British, all while becoming the father of America's Navy today. Ladies and gentlemen, John Paul Jones.
John Paul Jones was a little boy, he pointed to the sea.
Yoo-hoo.
I'll make you famous.
Welcome back to the Barber Chair Historian. As always, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It's the easiest way to help my channel, plus it's a tribute to the algorithm gods. And those gods help put my channel on the map. Now back to the video. Born John Paul, July 6, 1747 in Kirkcudbrightshire, Scotland. He was born into a poor household, leaving the family at the age of 12 to join the Royal Merchant Marines. He started his naval career as a cabin boy, growing up on the high seas where he learned the ins and outs of being a sailor and how to navigate the open ocean. In 1768, John Paul was a crew member aboard a ship also named John when the first mate and captain contracted yellow fever and both died. John Paul stepped up and took command of the ship, navigating his way back to Scotland, and when he arrived back to port, the owner of the ship heard about his exploits, so he rewarded him with command of the ship. At the age of 22, John Paul was the captain of his own merchant ship, but this didn't last long. In 1773, a mutiny took place aboard the ship while it was anchored off the coast of Tobago. The leader of the mutiny attacked John Paul, trying to bludgeon the badass to death, so in self-defense, he pulled out his pistol, shooting the man, killing the mutiny along with his attacker. But the dead man must have had friends in high places because the British admirals requested a formal investigation into the incident. Knowing the crew that had just tried to kill him and take his ship were going to be called to testify, John saw the writing on the wall, knowing he wouldn't get a fair trial, so he fled to America, adopting the new last name of Jones. As a wanted fugitive, John Paul Jones fit perfectly into his new community because he arrived in America just as tensions were reaching a boiling point between redcoats and colonials. His new neighbors hated the British almost as much as John Paul did. Arriving in Philadelphia in 1775, he immediately put his lifetime of skills at the high seas and knowledge of British tactics to good use. He signed up for the Continental Navy, not knowing the impact he'd have on America and its future Navy. Commissioned as a lieutenant, John Paul Jones started his colonial career aboard America's first flagship, the sloop Alfred. Being a former merchant marine, John Paul Jones was fluent in the tactics of his new enemy. So he called a meeting with the Continental Congress to explain how he can exploit the weaknesses of the British. The British had the largest navy in the world, so John knew that America's new vessels couldn't last in a shot-for-shot shootout with the well-armed and highly capable British battleships. But he knew smaller, fast-moving boats using hit-and-run guerrilla-style tactics would stand a much better chance. Think of how a $600 drone today can kill a $1 million tank. John Paul Jones also knew these fast boats would need a seaworthy fighting force capable of conducting amphibious assaults. An American officer named Samuel Nichols was present at the meeting, and that day he was commissioned to create 2 new battalions of amphibious soldiers. So on November 10, 1775, Nichols went to Tun Tavern to start recruiting. If you're not picking up what I'm putting down, John Paul Jones was the creator of the modern-day Marine Corps, and Tun Tavern was the first recruiting office, with Nichols being the first recruiter.
The few, the proud, the Marines.
JPJ was promoted to captain in 1776. With his Marines, a fast attack vessel, the USS Providence, and 8 other hit-and-run ships, he was ready to become America's freedom pirate. While the war waged on America's shores, John Paul Jones got the bright idea to take the fight to the British. So he pointed his ship towards England and set sail. They attacked British merchant vessels in hopes of damaging the war effort and crippling the English economy. September 23, 1779, John Paul Jones and the crew fought one of the bloodiest naval battles of the Revolutionary War. The HMS Serapis was a 2-deck Royal Navy battleship outfitted with 50 cannons. After a long battle, John Paul Jones' ship was on fire and sinking, so the commander of the Serapis requested a formal surrender, to where John said something that will be etched into the halls of history forever.
Has your ship surrendered?
I have not yet begun to fight.
I have yet begun to fight. With all odds against him, he pretty much stared death in the eye and fucking hawked a fat loogie in his face. He then pulled one of the biggest brass ball moves I've ever heard of. He turned his ship and crashed it into the Serapis. Then he had his own men tie the 2 ships together because if I'm going down, fuck you, I'm taking you with me.
Well done, my brave lads. We have her now.
After 3 long hours of hand-to-hand combat, the American Marines finally took control of the Serapis. Now for some fun. If you had to describe the US flag, how would you do it? 13 stripes, 50 stars, red, white, and blue? Well, when John Paul Jones took control of the Serapis, he sailed to the neutral country of the Netherlands to repair his new ship. The vessel, being newly commandeered, flew no flag, so it was in danger of being labeled a pirate ship, which was a crime punishable by death. So with the crew and himself being at risk of meeting Davy Jones at the end of a long drop and a quick stop, the only evidence they could provide proving their statehood was a piece of paper from Benjamin Franklin. The paper was a brief description of the new colonial flag, 13 stripes, 13 stars in the corner, red, white, and blue, to where the world was blessed with this beautiful bastardization of the American flag. The Serapis flag. Yes, that's a real registered American flag. The American newspapers love John Paul Jones, but every hero has its hater, and he was no different. The British wrote about him in a completely different way, calling him a common criminal and comparing him to Edward Teach, aka the infamous Blackbeard the pirate.
But you have heard of me.
And to be honest, they weren't that far off. Both were former merchant marines, both were done wrong by the British government, and both sought revenge on the men that did them wrong. After the Revolutionary War, Russia's Catherine the Great heard about John Paul Jones's exploits along the English coast, so she offered him a job as Rear Admiral in her navy, where he saw action in the Black Sea against the Turks. After his time as Rear Admiral, he moved to Paris to become the U.S. consulate to Algiers, but sadly he passed away before he can claim his new title at the age of 45 in 1792. He passed away from a stomach infection, being buried in France until 1902, when a man named Teddy Roosevelt had his body exhumed. Another American legend that changed his country for the better. His body was sent to the U.S. Naval Academy, where it still rests to this day. The British called this man a pirate, but I call him an American hero. When the fight came to our homes, he said, "Fuck you, I'm going to yours." He took the battle to their land. Well, actually the sea, but same thing. The British may have had the biggest navy in the world, but we had a crazy bastard with brass balls named John Paul Jones. If you enjoyed my video on America's Freedom Pirate, then please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, I'll see you beautiful bastards in the next video.
Yoo-hoo! I'll make you famous.